Mr. Tall 是不是 tall？ 看他腿怎么这么长呀？Mr. Tall was very, very, very tall. Quite the tallest person you've ever met. In fact, quite the tallest person you've never met. Because you've never met anybody with legs as long as Mr. Tall's leg. Have you? Now, the problem with being as tall as Mr. Tall meant that life was just one long problem, as you can see. Oh, happened. 他在睡觉的时候脚怎么啦？跑到这么长的地方。Oh dear, he used to sigh. Oh dear me, I do so wish that my legs were not quite so very, very, very long. 他走一步这么长，然后都能跨过一棵小树。He decided to go for a walk to think over his problem. He was just stepping over a tree when he heard a voice, a little voice. Hello. It was Mr. Small, standing underneath a daisy. But Mr. Tall was so tall, he couldn't see him. So Mr. Small shouted at the top of his voice, Hello! And Mr. Small shouted about as loud as a bee sneezing. So it took quite some time for Mr. Tall to spot him. Oh, he said gloomily, it's you. You don't look very happy, said Mr. Small. What's up? I am, replied Mr. Tall, because of these silly long legs of mine. Oh, said Mr. Small. Mr. Small decided to cheer him up. Let's go for a walk together, he suggested. So they did, which of course didn't work. It was like a giraffe going for a walk with a mouse. Then Mr. Small had an idea. What kind of idea? Mr. Small?
Sit on Mr. Tall's head.
Oh, which did work. And because of the length of Mr. Tall's leg, they were very quickly walked all the way to the seaside. Come for a swim, cried Mr. Small. You can't, replied Mr. Tall. By the time it gets deep enough for me to swim, I will be out the other side. So Mr. Small went for a swim, while Mr. Tall sat down with a face which was nearly as long as his leg. Mr. Tickle came along. Hello, he said. You look as if you need cheering up. Care for a tickle? No, thanks, replied Mr. Tall. What I would care for are some different legs. Mine are much too long. So are my arms, said Mr. Tickle cheerfully. But all the better for tickling. And off he went, chuckling, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle. Mr. Nosey came along. Cheer up, he said. You look very dull in the mouth. What's the problem? It's my legs, replied Mr. Tall. They are too long. So my nose, replied Mr. Nosey, laughing. But all the better for poking into other people's business. And off he went, looking for something to be nosy about, looking for anything to be nosy about. Mr. Greedy came along. "Hello," he cried. "You look gloomy. What's wrong?" "It's my legs," explained Mr. Toad. "They are too long." "So it's my tummy," replied Mr. Greedy, but all the better of filling with food. And off he went, licking his lips. Mr. Toad sat there and bopped about Mr. Tickle's arms, and Mr. Nosy's nose, and Mr. Greedy's tummy. He smiled, and then he grinned, and then he laughed out loud. He looked at his legs, those very, very, very long legs of his. "All the better for walking," he chuckled, and walked home. In 4 minutes, 14 miles. Mr. Small came out of the sea after his short swim. "And how am I going to get home?" he asked himself. So he set off walking all the way home, 14 miles. That was last year. He got home yesterday.
Little Miss